What is up, my dudes? Welcome back to Storytime with your favorite Reddit fairy. My name is Lorna, and today we're getting into some malicious compliance. Oh, yes, my dudes. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get right into it. Did you just cut in line? Posted by user Lord Arcanite. Probably kind of tame compared to others, but sharing this will at least help me rant it out a bit. I work at a coffee shop. I won't say which, but it's exactly the one someone would think of immediately when they hear coffee shop, at least in the US. Anyways, I'm manning the register. The second register person is fixing up something else behind me, and the drink maker coworker is busy making drinks, obviously. So there are three of us. There's a line of about 4 to 6 people from what I notice in my periphery the moment before the scene begins. Bit of context. Despite possibly coming off like I'm stereotyping, I'm in Hawaii and work in a hotel. Yes, the coffee shop is inside a hotel. So 99% of my customers are tourists / off-islanders. This means I get people from nations all over or within the Pacific Rim, including East Asia, AU, NA, etc. Now, certain countries have certain cultures, which means they are fundamentally different than US in most denotative way I can describe. And despite coming to the US and knowing that we are culturally different than their country, they still act like their country's different standards are okay or unproblematic. On to the story. I'm helping a lady of a certain nationality, which is evident by her heavy accent. Working in this shop for 4 years, working in Waikiki for 8 years, and living in Hawaii for almost 30, it's practically innate to immediately know someone's ethnicity / nationality from their accent alone. I've barely taken any notice to who is next in line as I'm focusing primarily on the customer ahead of me. I finish up her order, which ends up taking my gaze away from the front-faced visuals, and possibly notice some new customers immediately behind her that might have walked in from the wrong way. I take note of this as cutting in line is just as plausible and realistic thing that just happens in life, and more so happens with people of their nationality. By my own personal small but 8-year-long sample size, these two new ladies are of the same nationality as the customer I am currently finishing up. I point the lady towards the pickup area, as people of her age don't usually know how this works, and she shuffles along. As the two ladies approach the register, before I even had a chance to call them forward if I intended to, I put my hand up and say something along the line of, "Did you just walk in from this way?" gesturing the opposite direction of the line. "You have to wait in line and let these other people go first." I gesture visually, showing how the line of people in the queue flow. I make eye contact with the next two customers, Americans, based on their clothes and posture. Americans usually lean on one leg. European typically distribute balance on 2 legs when standing. They look a little pissed and are looking at the ladies. Definite evidence. I turn back towards the ladies. The one in front looks a little flustered now, and the one behind starts speaking. "We with her." She points out to the previous customer waiting for her drink and isn't even looking this way, as if she has zero actual relation to these ladies or this situation. Noting that the behind lady didn't actually answer the question, textbook deflection, I looked again at the Americans with my eyebrows slightly raised as if asking for their input. But they were pretty fixed on staring daggers at these women now. I look back towards the ladies. The front one is even more thrown, not even making eye contact anymore, and the back lady tries to fix it by saying, "I'm not here, my friend was in line though," and walks away, leaving her guilt-ridden friend to take the brunt of anything else I do. I turn to my coworker and tap her on the shoulder as she wasn't aware of the situation and go, "Hey, can you ring the next few customers up real fast?" Then in a lowered voice, "There's an incident." I continued, implying I would tell her later so I could cause less of a scene and enact more of an immediate fix to the situation. I'm not super confrontational until push comes to shove, and this wasn't one of those moments, so I chose compliance over outright revenge or public freakouting. I started taking the lady's order. She seemed a bit guilty, and I'll admit this is what made me choose to be less vengeful, but I still lean more towards the if you don't speak up, you're part of the problem. So I chose to ring her up very slowly, asking her to repeat a few things she didn't say loud enough, forgetting something once or twice, and ultimately doing everything physical in a slower manner while my coworker rung up the line quickly. Eventually, it timed out nicely that by the time I finished her whole order, the entire line was rung up and their drink orders were in queue. So I simply placed her 2 cups down at the end of the queue, as that's just when I happened to have finished her order, and put a nice smiley face instead of asking for her name, which I can neither confirm nor deny means decaf this drink. As the compliance was set in motion, out of my hands now, I restocked a bit, keeping an eye on the 2 ladies. The guilty one was off to the side looking away as the brash one stood front and center at the handoff point, expecting the next drink to be hers. Then the next drink. Then the next drink, as the actual drink owners had to maneuver their arms around her to grab their drinks. The Americans actually asked her to step aside, which made them smile and her frown even more. Eventually, they got their whole order, after every other customer had been served and left, and the brash woman looked like she was fuming from impatience, and as they walked out, they didn't even glance at their friend. The first customer sitting with her family, still showing no sign of knowing these 2 other ladies. This should also be an entitled bitch, too, or entitled people, or something. It doesn't matter about their ethnicity. I don't know why people keep bringing people's ethnicities into the stories and stereotyping them. It's a funny story, I will give it that, but honestly, you could have just said 2 ladies and it still would have been funny. You didn't really have to go into what their ethnicity was, but that's just my opinion again. But this one was funny because that is an awesome malicious compliance. You took their order, you started taking their order first, but that's pretty genius. I like that a lot. Guns on a plane? Okay. Nail clippers? I don't think so, lady. Posted by user angelic-bitch. So the airport post reminded me of a few years ago when I worked for FBOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The facility I worked at was a complex. 4 different facilities / levels of inmates. Camp, medium, max, and supermax. I had made the transport team, which was usually just consisted of busing guys to transfer facilities, medical appointments, etc. We also had to handle emergency transports to hospitals, or, as in this case, WITSEC transfers. WITSECs are in the prison witness protection inmates, usually guys who testified on the big bosses for lighter sentences. So as you can imagine, if someone recognized them, we had to move them pretty fast. So all transport team had a go bag in our locker. I was pretty new, so I had gone out when first accepted to transport and just bought the bare minimums. Go bags are like medium purse size. I had a change of undergarments, soft pants, t-shirt, and I just picked up one of those pre-packaged toiletry bags from Walgreens. So I come into work and I'm walking down to my unit when LT intercepts me. Seems someone effed up big time and we got a WITSEC and his co-defendant, guy he testified against, in the same facility. So WITSEC was snatched up, is in the SHU, and we're to take him to a facility in Florida. Plane leaves in a couple of hours. Driver is standing by. Inmates' belongings will be mailed. Why the big hurry? Well, both these guys are max security with a very high escape / threat to public safety rating and gang affiliations. Basically, if one knew the other was there that close, that it could kick off a full-blown riot. If I remember right, 3 people's heads rolled for that F-up. So we're off to grab our go bags, get paperwork, and off to the armory. This guy required transport in a 5-point harness, minimum 2 armed guards. So we're issued a 9mm and 45 rounds of ammo each. We have 3 mags, 2 on our belts, 1 in the gun, and 1 round chambered. We are required to count each bullet before leaving armory. Me and partner get all necessary documents in triplicate and scoop up our guy, and off we go. Get to the airport in Denver. There's a whole special procedure for check-in. One of the things was they give you a red card with your boarding pass to let TSA know that you're law enforcement and have a weapon with you. Now, keep in mind, this was a few years after 9/11. All this stuff was still new. We have to take our restrained inmate through security now. We were a bit taken back by this. Okay, we say, and shuffle our guy on down. Now, once we showed the gatekeeper, the person who made sure there were only ticketed passengers past that point, our tickets and red cards, we're directed to a separate security line where we secured our inmate in a holding room, and then had TSA verify our ammo count, weapons cleared, etc. More paperwork. You have to verify the count when you land, too. So my partner and I are all done with weapons declaration, paperwork signed, and TSA says, "I need to scan your bags too." We both shrug and toss them on our belts. They buzz through and lady stops the belt and is scrutinizing the screen. Finally, she says to me, "I need you to open your bag." I give her a quizzical look, but open it up. She points to my toiletries bag and says, "Open this." Since I'd never used it before, I had to open all the packaging, etc. I dumped the contents out. The TSA lady exclaimed accusatorily, "Aha!" and grabs the 1-inch long by maybe a 1/4-inch wide pair of nail clippers. I mean, seriously, they were the smallest ones I'd ever seen in my life. So TSA lady snatches them up and triumphantly looks at me, and with all the smugness of a well-seasoned airport security monkey, informs me that these are contraband. I stare at her, actually speechless, for at least 30 seconds. I blink a few times and say very calmly, "Okay, you keep them then," and start to throw my stuff back in my bag. But oh no, Miss TSA isn't going down that easily. She very boldly informs me that she isn't my mother or my personal assistant. I brought the contraband into the airport and I can walk my happy ass right back outside with it. Me. And put it where? TSA. "I don't care what you do with it as long as it ain't in here." Me. If you truly feel that those clippers in my possession is a threat to the security of the aircraft, then by all means, keep them. But we don't have time to personally take them outside. TSA. "Not my problem. You should have thought of that before you tried sneaking contraband on my plane." Me. "You do remember a few minutes ago when you and I counted out 45 rounds of 9mm ammunition, right?" TSA. "So?" Me. "Well, in a pinch, I'm gonna say odds are pretty good given my available options. The last thing I'd use to assert control over an entire plane is the 1-inch nail clippers of doom. In fact, if I found myself left with no other options outside of the death clippers, I'd just call the whole thing off." By the way, partner has been losing his shit ever since he realized she was dead serious. He's not as quietly as he thinks he is, snorting, gasping, and laughing on the other side of her x-ray belt. TSA. "I don't know what to tell you. I'm not throwing them away for you, and I sure as hell ain't letting you board my plane with them." Me. "Ma'am, maybe we could just step back and take a logical look at the situation. We need to board our flight. Nobody can step foot onto that plane until we get our inmate on and secured. I am a federal officer. My partner and I really don't want to draw any more attention to ourselves than necessary, for our safety and yours. I have a firearm and 45 rounds on my person. Surely, if I can be trusted with that, I can be trusted with the clippers, and I promise to dispose of them as soon as we land so it will never be an issue again." TSA. "I don't know who you think you're talking to, but it ain't me. I said take them and go." She felt as though this was a mic drop moment as she said her piece and proceeded to back away, fold her arms, and stare at me. So I just start laughing at the absurdity of the situation. I grab the clippers, put them in my front pocket, tell partner, let's go. We go get our inmate and start shuffling him to the front. Partner is on the phone with LT and Captain, telling them what's been going on. They can't believe it and are pissed. We're being paged to come to Gate X to board. I get out of TSA lady's sight and approach different TSA security lady. Ask her to get a supervisor for me as we have an issue with our transport and show her my red card. She calls supervisor with some kind of get your butt here now code because within seconds supervisor is jogging up to us. I ask him if he can kindly call Gate X for Flight Y and tell them know that they're going to be delayed approximately an hour because I cannot dispose of my contraband nail clippers within the airport. He looks at me like a confused puppy, head tilt and everything, and says, "Huh?" while eyeing my weapon. I tell him I'm very sorry. I didn't realize I had clippers in my bag. Your TSA agent was very clear that no exceptions could be made, and I am required to remove them from the premises before we can board. Unless, of course, if you wouldn't mind, could you possibly help me out so we don't have to escort him, nodded towards inmate, back through the airport? I pull the instrument of doom from my pocket and offer them to him. Well, to wrap this up finally, supervisor takes clippers, says he'll address this, gives us a ride on the cart to our gate. We board. The rest of the trip was uneventful, less the non-stop hilarious quips my partner was dishing out the whole time. He told the story to everyone we met on that trip. Warden even heard about it and brought us into the office so he could hear the story firsthand. Everyone thought it was funny after the fact. Federal prisons, a laugh. Riot, a minute. Oh, Jesus. Oh my god. Okay, this was a good story. This is such a good story. Why? Like, why did this TSA clearly has something against federal agents. I don't know. She's got some attitude on her, and there's gotta be a reason behind it. Like, they have a gun on them. Why would you think that nail clippers, like, why are you trying to make this person's life a living hell? Just fucking take them. I don't know. I guess I don't really know the rules of airports and TSAs and what they have to follow, but come on. Come on, man. That's just common sense. This woman seriously lacks it. I'm gonna say that. No sick days allowed? Okay. Posted by user ScreeRCT. So I worked in a bike shop for 8 years, and it was a brilliant and awful job. Awful being that I hated my boss. Proper dick when it came to your well-being. If you were sick, he'd drive to your house and knock on your door, try to convince you to come to work. This was mainly because he'd want to leave early in the afternoon to do paperwork and couldn't leave the other staff member on their own. There were only 3 of us, including the manager. I gave into this bullying for years. Coming into work, throwing up out the back door while selling a bike was one of my personal favorites, especially when the customer expressed his worry to my manager and got laughed off. Let's call my manager Asshat. Anyway, one December, the viruses were going around. Everyone was getting it. Obviously, dealing with hundreds of customers a week, I was bound to get it. I got it, and I got it bad. I ended up bedridden on my day off and text Asshat that I wouldn't be in tomorrow, as I'd need to go to the doctor's. Phone starts ringing off the hook. Messages left, right, and center. Then the knocking at my door. I couldn't answer it as I could barely walk downstairs to do so. He was there for a good 20 minutes before he finally gave up. He messaged me later on that night saying if I didn't come in, then I'd lose a day's pay because I was on a part-time contract at the time, but was working full-time hours. Then it hit me. I can really screw him over here. I didn't need the money at the time as I worked in a pub on night as well, which topped my wages up quite generously. So I messaged him back, "No problem. I'll go on my contracted hours. See you in 2 days when my shift starts again." All I got back from Asshat was, "Haha, okay." I came in 2 days later, still in an awful condition, but able to get on with some work whilst coughing my lungs up. Asshat starts reeling off the Christmas orders. Now, for a bike shop, it's a military operation of booking so many bikes in a day to build and be collected. You'd get 10 out of 12 bikes in to build for the next day, then make sure today's bikes were picked up or moved back into storage. That alone is a full day's job, on top of selling bikes and parts, etc. We also did car auto parts like bulbs and batteries, so in the winter you can imagine how many of those we were changing on top. So you'll build around 220 to 270 bikes in December alone, just for Christmas, on top of any other sales you might get on the day. So roll on my first day back, get my bikes built, get customers served, all sorted. This was the Wednesday, so I tell Asshat I'll see him Friday, as that was my next contracted day. Say what? No, you'll be here tomorrow. Got a lot on this month. No, I'm part-time. I won't be in. Contract says so. Stop being daft. Get your arse in tomorrow. Sure enough, I don't turn in. Come Christmas Eve, it's the biggest fucking mess you've ever seen. Bikes everywhere. No one collecting them, and those who are, their bikes haven't been built. Worst cut Christmas ever recorded in that shop. No one was paying for bikes because they couldn't collect them due to not being built, or they're in storage 15 minutes away. That asshat can't get out of the shop to go grab them for the customer. So, guess who got handed a lovely, shiny, full-time contract with sick days, a higher wage, and an apology on New Year's Eve? I was there another year, and I never got bugged for taking a sick day again. Edit, it wasn't Halford's. I appreciate the guesses, but no, it was an independent business. I find it's always the independent ones that... No, it's not always, but a lot of times, it's the independent small businesses that don't have a fucking clue how to run them. My last job included a party store I worked in Toronto. I think those are the only two that were locally owned that I worked for. And they were both horrible. They don't know how to run a business at all. They don't know how to manage their employees. They don't know how to talk to their employees. This is the one thing I find that is a very, very large trending thing happening in small local businesses. It's a very toxic workplace because they're not held to the same standards, so they get away with a lot of shit, and people are too scared to speak out against them because they're like, well, you know, they're just nobodies like you and me. They're just small-time people that just happen to open shop. Well, you know what? They're not small-time anymore, and they need to be held accountable. You guys need to stand up for yourselves, and that's what happened. That happens on a lot of places, and yeah, just stand up for yourselves. Don't let people push you around. I'm not saying be insubordinate. I fucking hate that word. I'm not saying be insubordinate, but stand up for yourselves. When you see something is wrong, say something, because otherwise things will never change. And it's unfortunate that there are places still being run like this because people didn't stand up for themselves. So, I don't know. But anyway, this is a good story. I liked it. And it's pretty rare that, you know, they actually apologize and you benefit from it in the end. Usually you see these malicious compliance stories where you finally had it with your boss and you decide, the malicious compliance is starting now. Usually you end up quitting, or, you know, you get another job offer behind his back or whatever. But this one is different in the way that he actually got an apology and a raise and, you know, full-time hours. So that's pretty awesome. Classmate asks me to help him cheat. I comply. Posted by user RealBip. I'm a high school freshman, and we had just finished our biology quiz, and we were trading papers to grade. I pull out my pen, but my classmate, whom I don't really like, stops and tells me, "Grade it with a pencil." I'm catching on to his desire to cheat, but say that the pen is more aesthetic. He continues to insist, saying he'll pay me, and a plan forms in my head. I accept the bribe, $1, and pull out my pencil. The first two answers are wrong. I get my pencil and push it across the paper violently, ensuring that the pencil mark was thick and dark. I continue with the marks and checks, grinding the pencil lead across the paper every time. We finish grading the papers and hand them back. He furiously tries to erase, but the marking smudge and the teacher sees what he's doing. She takes the quiz away, and he's left with sore arms from trying to erase. I ask for the money, but he claims he doesn't have any, as expected. Edit. The guy I'm writing about has been pretty rude to me throughout the year. He spammed my Snapchat asking me for answers for homework, and I kinda reached my breaking point today. You did, but in a very classy way. That was pretty good, because, yeah, fuck those kids that want to cheat. They're not gonna get anywhere in life by cheating, unless... I better bite my tongue, because clearly that's a lie. Clearly that's the biggest fucking lie I've ever said in my life. Okay, moving on to the next one. Learned real quick about malicious compliance while doing high-end construction. Posted by user IDGAFIN865. Not even gonna attempt that one. Years ago, I was doing construction for a casino in the restaurant portion, while another company was working on the hotel. The Genera contractor was notorious. The Genera? I think that's general contractor. My brain was just all over that. Yeah, the Genera contractor was notorious for being a dick and insisted no extra work was to be done without prior written authorization and approval by the owners and architect. Basically, follow the plans exactly. This happened time to time, and usually they find little mistakes and submit an update and approve the added expense. Not this time. 10 floors were built exactly per plan. The top 2 were luxury suites, marble floor to ceiling in the bathrooms. Really expensive stuff. Towards the end of the job, they're walking off the suites. Probably 95% of everything is done. Where's the light switch in the bathroom? Head electrician just smiles. None in the plans, sir. We followed the plans to the letter, just like you said. No lights, no switches. We could hear screaming several floors down. They ended up having to rip out marble in every bathroom to run pipe for wire and all the lights and switches, but didn't lift a finger until they were guaranteed in writing they would be paid for the extra work. Oh my god, can you imagine? Oh my god, that's good. Oh, it's so good. Oh my god. That's whew. Measure twice, cut once. That's all I'm gonna say, and it applies to blueprints too. Oh, good. Oh, this is good. I love it. You want me to see the doctor? Posted by user PM_me_beef_curtains. I can't. Oh, no. Okay. I'm sorry. Let's get into it. This is going to be a long video. I'm sorry. I got the giggles, guys. Okay, I'm sorry. As a teen, I worked under the golden arches of Mickey D. I was treated like shit on the daily, always catching the shit jobs and getting rotated last minute. It was a Saturday night, and I got off my shift and went to a house party. We drank and drank and drank like teenagers do, British teenagers, and come Sunday morning, I was hanging. 9 a.m. as I'm heading to the bus stop, my phone rings. My boss kicking off that I'm not in work. He'd altered the rotation earlier in the week, and I hadn't noticed. Me. I'm too ill to be in. I've been throwing up. Boss. That's funny, because the manager from the next town over saw you at the bus station. Me. Seriously. I am genuinely ill. I should be okay tomorrow. Boss. No. You need to go to the doctor and get the all clear to come into work. Well then. Okay then. This is the UK. Doctor's appointments are free, so I book one the next day. I tell the doctor the problem. I got drunk on Foster's and threw up, and asked him for a note declaring me fit for work. The doc explains that this is not an NHS covered thing outside of mental health, and as my employer requested it, it would be a chargeable item from the practice. He asks who my employer is and suggests I check that they really require this. I call my boss from the doc's office. Me. The doc says the certification is a chargeable thing. Boss. I don't care. Either get certified to return or don't come back. The doc hears and gets to work putting a certification letter together. Tells me not to worry about the cost this time. He prints it and pops it in an envelope addressed to my boss and sends me on my way. I head in for my shift after lunch and hand the envelope to my boss. 5 minutes later, he's screaming down the phone. Turns out the doc had invoiced the franchise for the cost of the service, somewhere in the region of £200. TLDR, boss insists I get certified to return to work, gets the bill for it. That's an awesome doctor, my dudes. I was hoping that's where it was going. I was really hoping that's where it was going. I didn't think that was possible to do, but that's awesome. That is an awesome doctor. I like that doctor a lot. Sorry, cash only. Posted by user Fitun Chandra Patel. Short but sweet. You don't need a TLDR. I fancied Vietnamese food last night, so I found a nearby takeaway. I walked in, looked through the menu, asked a few questions, then go to pay by card. Sorry, cash only, the woman says with a smug, sorry not sorry look on her face. I can't be bothered hunting for a cash machine, so I told her to leave it and I turned to walk out. Just as I get to the door, I notice a justeat.com sign in the window. I turn around, go back to the counter and ask, "You're on Just Eat, right?" Her face drops. With a shit-eating grin, I stand there right in front of her and reorder the exact same thing, pay with PayPal, and smiles sweetly as she grudgingly accepts the printout and tells me to sit and wait. Even if she did spit in my food, the look on her face was totally worth it. I think I would beg to disagree on that one. The look on anybody's face would never be worth eating someone's spit in my food. I have a very strong aversion to spit, mucus, boogers, any of them. I can't, just thinking about it, I just want to throw up. No. My cousin, I don't call him my cousin anymore, but when we were kids, I called him my cousin. We were like thick as thieves at one point, but anyway, he turned into a giant asshole. He, at the time he started turning into a giant asshole, he would do things like pin me down and, try to hork spit into my face, holding a spitball, down over my face, and he'd try to suck it back up real quick, but a couple of times he didn't. Okay, no, I'm not talking about this anymore. Let's move on to the next story. Are you sure those are jalapeno peppers? If you insist. Posted by user Caduceus12. I was at the supermarket today buying serrano peppers. The lady ringing me up was a little unhappy that I didn't pre-weigh and print the barcode for my vegetables. I probably should have, but I forgot. I apologized and said I would make sure to print out the barcode ahead of time in the future. Anyways, she had to look up the vegetables on the computer, and when she got to the peppers, she marked them as jalapenos. I interrupted and said they were actually serranos. She gave me a look and said, "They look like jalapenos to me." Since jalapenos are cheaper per pound than serranos, I apologized and said, "Oh yeah, you must be right. Thanks." And saved $1.20 thanks to a little malicious compliance. I don't know what serrano peppers look like. I'm not really a fan of peppers, but I like this and I don't like this because you're still thieving. But it's kind of like an asshole tax, but the asshole tax is being costed to the company, not the person. So I don't know. I've never had to print a barcode for my vegetables before. Usually there's stickers on them already, or there's not. I can't remember a time where I had to label them myself. Never. I guess this would fall under how people are upset about all the self-checkouts at Walmart and Shoppers Drug Mart and all those other places that are doing self-checkouts. I fucking love self-checkout. Yeah, I'm gonna be that bitch. I'm sorry, but I love self-checkout. But there's a lot of people that don't like it, and this would probably fall under the same thing. Like, they wouldn't feel like they should be expected to label their own fruit. Like, they would expect that to be done at the store level. You know, that's what they pay people for. But I don't know. I guess I can kind of agree with that, because people complain too that food costs are up. But they'll complain that food costs are up, and then they'll complain that there's not enough employees. Well, or there's, I don't know. I don't own a business, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they'll complain about one thing, but the thing that they're complaining about affects another thing, so they fix the one thing, and it causes the other thing to domino, and it's like, they have to do self-checkout things in order to make groceries more affordable. I don't know why that word just escaped me. Affordable. Probably because nothing is affordable anymore. Oh my god. Something's gotta change, my dudes. Something's gotta change. We definitely need more jobs. That's for sure. Dbag gets a little bit of his own medicine. Posted by user MissAGirl2888. I never thought that I'd have the chance to post a malicious compliance story, but I literally just connected this story to a malicious compliance. It's short, but I found it funny. I was on a business trip that involved spending long periods of time in a place that I like to call childish hellscape. In childish hellscape, there are many children, many sticky surfaces, and many Karens. The trip involved a professional development event for around 100 people, while their children were being occupied in the park section of a childish hellscape. While the day was long, our staff got started early. The staff needed coffee. With the sheer number of Karens in the place, it wasn't surprising that the coffee shop was packed. My husband and I got in line for coffee much earlier than the other staff, and the line formed quickly behind us. 2 staffers had asked us to keep their spot in line. My husband and I don't drink coffee, so we told them that we would get them a spot in line so they didn't have to wait as long. When the staffers showed up, they tried to reclaim their spot in line, but Dbag freaked out, saying that they can't cut. We explained the situation, but he said he didn't care. Okay, fine, have it your way. I asked them what they wanted right in front of him. He tried to protest, but we were in our spot in line, and what was he gonna do? They handed us their cards, and the baristas chuckled under their breath while we ordered and paid. Yeah, like, what does it matter? Like, it's not like you're adding another order on top of what was already going to be ordered, you know? Like, you entitled... Blah, blah, blah. Hate you people. No, I don't. I don't hate anybody. Stop saying that. In a minute, I'm gonna turn into, like, Sybil with, like, I don't know, how many different personalities did Sybil just have? I don't know. Oh my god, guys. It's getting to be the weekend, and I'm getting loopy. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Oh my god, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this one, I think. Sure, let's ruin the expensive electrical equipment completely unnecessarily. Posted by user Beer Tastes Nice. This is a story that my friend John told me. John works for a utilities company that has a contract to install energy meters in domestic households across the country. His division covers an area with a population of about 2 million people. Every morning, he looks at his little company iPad to see the list of jobs he has and goes off in his van to remove the old meters and install new ones. The company has a very ambitious target for all households in the country to have these new meters by a certain date. As it goes with companies that do this kind of work, they regularly get audited. The employees' vans get checked for safety, the meters and equipment get double and triple checked, and so on. That fateful day was an internal audit for that locale. It was a beautiful April morning when all the engineers covering John's area turned up to have their vans and equipment inspected. There were many people and vans, and John had to wait a while for the internal auditor, Mark, to approach. He noticed that Mark left a trail of puzzled faces in his wake. "All right, mate," Mark said. "Can you just unload all the meters from your van and put them on the ground in front?" John said, looking at the April sky. "Really? I mean, it looks like it's going to rain." "Nah, it'll be fine." "No, really. The forecast this morning said there was going to be rain. Also, the sky's looking a bit cloudy." "Look," Mark snapped. "I have loads of these to test while you guys are indoors being quizzed. Just do as I say and leave them on the ground." As he moved on to the next guy, John made incredulous eye contact with another engineer, and they both shrugged as they started unloading the meters. Sure enough, as they sat in a conference room doing their knowledge and aptitude tests, it started pouring, like really coming down. A few minutes later, Mark ran in, grabbed one guy, and they went outside. John is not only a responsible person in general, but also happens to like his job, so he spoke up. "Shouldn't we all go out there to help?" The manager in charge of the test said tersely, "Mark only got that one guy." John shrugged. "All right." After they finished what they were doing, they went back outside. The hundreds of electrical meters were still on the ground, and Mark was still running around, looking a little nervous. John called him over. "Mate, what are you doing? None of these are usable now." No, Mark said. "See, the ones that you put upside down will be still fine." A few other engineers came over and stared. "Mark," John said, taking him by the shoulders, "these are all electrical meters. They are not waterproof. Literally, none of them are usable now. Compliance would kick our ass if we even thought about putting them in our customer's home." "You do realize," another engineer said, "that because you insisted we dump our stuff out in the rain, no one in this area of 2 million people will have a meter to fit for at least the next 3 days?" As Mark looked around him, the reality of what he'd done dawned on him. John later described the color of his face to me as just pure gray. 6 months after John first told me this story, I asked him what happened to Mark. He said no one had heard of or from him again. Edit. Someone brought this up in a comment, so I thought I would add it to the main post. John and the other guys aren't engineers in the technical sense. They don't have engineering degrees, and they don't do any of the technical planning. However, their job title is meter engineer, and so I referred to them as such out of familiarity. Hope that clears things up. Wow, can you imagine how much that probably cost them? It's probably like millions of dollars, maybe, I would assume. Yikes. Mark, you done effed up. What is it about guys named Mark that just fuck everything up? JK, I know a lot of Marks that don't fuck things up, but I know a lot that do, so... Sorry, not sorry. I mean sorry, but not sorry. Sorry. Alright, my dudes, and we have made it to the last story of the day, and this one is titled, "Sorry Boss, I Don't Speak Spanish," posted by user classy_pyro. I work at a hotel as a night auditor, and this malicious compliance begins with a small bit of information I was told when I was initially hired for this position. When I interviewed for the position, and this is very important later on, I was told by the HR lady that the hotel paid a bonus, $100, for each foreign language I spoke well enough to serve our guests. Management cleared my $100 for speaking English after I passed through their evaluation period. My main language is Portuguese. At first, I was glad to be working in the night shift, mostly because my colleague then, Mr. Castillo, was from Guatemala, so whenever any guest that spoke Spanish showed up, he handled it, and in turn, I handled any English-speaking foreigners. Naturally, he did a lot more work since the amount of Spanish-speaking guests we received is significantly larger than our English-speaking ones. Meanwhile, Mr. Castillo was in the process of learning English, and I had taken an interest in Spanish, so we helped each other out. Not long after, Mr. Castillo got himself a job paying several times over what the hotel did, and sadly left me. My new colleague, a newly promoted bellboy, didn't speak English, though he could understand some, and didn't speak Spanish at all. In fact, he didn't even try to improve any of his language skills while I slowly kept improving my Spanish, trying to use more and more of it every day to serve our dear guests. As of the start of the month, I spoke to our front desk manager and asked him in plain Spanish, what did I have to do exactly to receive the $100 bonus for speaking Spanish? He was surprised but said nothing more since the front desk got busy with checkouts and my shift was up. But a few days later, he mentioned he spoke to HR and informed them I was speaking Spanish well enough to receive my bonus, and now he was just waiting to hear back from them. A few days later, the HR lady asked me what size shirt I wore, since they were going to be ordering new uniforms in the coming weeks, and took the opportunity to ask her about my bonus for Spanish, and she mentioned they were talking with our director about it. A day later, she informed me they wouldn't be paying me the bonus for a foreign language, since it was on file that I was already receiving it. I replied I was receiving a bonus for English, not Spanish, and she said she would speak to the director again, and within a few days, all would be made well. Now, I'm not really in a hurry to get my bonus, but it would be nice if they had cleared it already, as it would show up in my next paycheck. But guess what? They didn't. Our director talked to HR again, and my boss, and told them that even though I am serving our dear Spanish-speaking customers in Spanish, I don't in fact speak Spanish. I'm far from fluent, but I can explain how the hotel works, direct guests to where they need to be, and assist them with what they need. Be it finding a pharmacy at 3 a.m., getting a cab to go out and get drinks, or even hire an escort. Yep. But apparently, it isn't good enough for our director, and my manager said he can't really afford to fight him on it. Okay, no biggie, I guess. Maybe we'll try again next year when I can speak a little better, I thought. However, the cruel and unforgiving gods of the hotel industry gave me the perfect opportunity to strike back. Earlier last week, we received a large group of 30-plus Spanish-speaking tourists, which in addition to our normal occupancy, meant we were effectively sold out for the week. Big groups are usually a minor inconvenience when you're checking them in, but an even bigger problem when checking them out. Especially if they're one person per room, which means you basically have a huge load of rooms to check out, one by one, while an endless line forms in front of the desk. 80-plus checkouts aren't unusual for our hotel on Friday mornings, but 110-plus is a problem. Normally, when the morning shift has workloads this big, our front desk manager comes in early to help. But he couldn't this time since he took a personal day since his mother fell ill. That left our director with only one choice: to ask the night audit to stay late and help until our reservation people clocked in and could then replace us at the front desk. See, my colleague doesn't like staying late, especially since he works at a second job with his father in the afternoon, meaning he has only the morning and early afternoon to sleep. I don't like staying late on Fridays because of the amount of checkouts, which means it'll be forever before you can take a breath, and even more so before you can leave. However, this time our director didn't even ask my colleague, and instead told me to stay late because we would have a sizable workload, and about a third of it would require someone that spoke Spanish, or it would slow down everything to a crawl. I told him that I would not be staying late that morning, and before I could get another word in, he started yammering about how I'm wrong and I should be more of a team player, and that he would be very grateful for it. Wanting to get back to my sleep, I told him to ask my colleague, and he said he couldn't, that they needed me, and when I asked him why, he clearly stated, "We need 2 Spanish speakers that morning to make sure everything goes okay with the checkouts." Not one for missing an opportunity to get payback, I replied, "Sorry boss, I don't speak Spanish," turned off my phone and went back to sleep. Update: sorry for holding out on the aftermath. I wrote this during my shift, and as I was putting on the finishing touches, we had a server crash, and I spent the next hour and a half trying to restore our backups and get the camera system up again. Update: aftermath. After I woke up and turned my cell phone back on, I had several missed calls from the hotel and 2 missing calls from our front desk manager. Good guy. I called back the hotel, but the afternoon shift picked up, and they didn't know anything, so I called my manager's phone. He answered and asked me what was going on because the director was furious about me hanging up on him and that I was refusing to work. I explained to him the situation in regards to my bonus for speaking Spanish, and since the hotel was trying to hold out on me, I was going to withhold performance. Anyone who's ever worked customer service know how much damage withholding performance can do, even if just a little. In the end, my manager begged me to stay until our reservations people came in at 8 a.m. My shift ends at 7:20 a.m. So I agreed on the condition that I would not check out anyone who spoke Spanish. He reluctantly accepted and said he would back me up in the following shitstorm that would happen. What happened was that the group came down for breakfast precisely at 6:40 a.m., finished at 7:10 a.m., give or take, and went back to the room to collect their belongings. At this time, the 2 front desk attendants on the morning shift had arrived, and as well as our bellboy. Plus, there was me and my colleague waiting to punch out and go. We had already started checking people out, and this day was particularly busy. We had 3 or 4 people waiting to be checked out, and it doesn't help that we only have 3 computers for 4 people to work with another computer for us to check the cameras. When 7:20 a.m. came up, my colleague quickly picked up his things and left, and I took over his spot. At this time, the first few people in the group started coming down, and they already had to wait since we were all checking out other people. A few minutes later, I got the first one, but I told them I couldn't check them out since I don't speak Spanish and asked them to wait for my colleague to become available. In the end, I ended up refusing service to 10 people or so, which started forming a line right in front of the desk, which only grew since other guests assumed they were all in line to be checked out. My colleagues on the morning shift were not happy at all. The guests were less than satisfied, and when the first of our reservations people showed up at 8 a.m., I logged out, punched out, and went home. By that time, there were 20-plus line of people waiting to be checked out by 2 overworked receptionists, only one of which spoke Spanish. In the ensuing shitstorm that happened, the hotel's director arrived at 8:30 a.m. in an attempt to minimize the anger of the human centipede who formed in the front desk, started chatting with the guests and otherwise trying to distract them so they would be less angry and avoid giving the hotel a poor review. I got a mild chewing out by my manager for poor work ethic instead of being written up. True to his word, he backed me up when the director called him in HR for a meeting regarding my actions. You can't demand someone speak a language that you know they don't know, right? I still haven't got my bonus for speaking Spanish, and I let my manager know that I will not be speaking any Spanish while on the job until they give in and give me my hard-earned bonus. Oh my god. You guys might, if you've been subscribed for a while, you've probably heard me talk about it in my other videos about how I do speak not Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I understand a little bit, but I don't speak it at all. But I do speak and understand French. I understand more than I can speak. But I had this situation happen to me too, where I was getting paid less than everybody else, even though that I had the skill to speak and understand French, and they didn't. I'd say there was like 70 to 80% of the people I was working with that were considered my coworkers or my, on my level, that were getting paid more without that skill. So I stopped using it, and I did claimed that I didn't know French. So I don't blame this person at all. If they say you're going to get a bonus for speaking a language, you should get a bonus for each language that you know, because you're being benefited. This story right here proves it. Like, if you don't treat your employees well, they're not going to give a fuck. They're going to let those lines build up, and it's going to look bad on you, not them. So pay your employees what they're worth, and then you don't have that problem. All right, my dudes, that is all for today. Thank you so much for sticking it out with me. If you did, if you liked it, hit that like button. You know you want to. And if you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the little bell icon next to it to be notified when I have future videos just like this, so you never miss one. As always, the links to these stories will be in the description, so head on over to Reddit and show those posters some love with some upvotes. You know they deserve it. And while you're in the enchanted land of Reddit, head on over to r/RedditFairy and post your stories, my dudes, because you never know. They just might show up in the next episode. So until next time, have a great weekend and stay fantabulous, my dudes.